Ladies and gentlemen, whether you're a longtime follower of chess, or a recent follower of chess, or not a follower of chess, simply floating along in the YouTube video algorithm, you're likely familiar with the names Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. Nowadays, in 2025, when this is being recorded, people refer to them playing against each other as El Clásico, which in football terms is Real Madrid versus Barcelona. What's funny is about 5 years ago, I think I was the first one to call it that. And it's good to see that it's caught on, because it's true. Every time they play each other, it's pretty awesome. Recently, they played in the Esports World Cup. Today, I'm going to be showing you how Hikaru got revenge on Magnus and won a tournament with 10 out of 11 points. That's all I have to say. Please do enjoy. It's August, so what's fun about August is every single year, YouTube chess viewership is down. People are enjoying their summer, they're at the beach, they're hanging out with their friends, they're playing tennis or padel or whatever else they're doing, going on picnics. So if you are watching chess, welcome. We'll have a small channel vibe, and maybe we can all enjoy reading some other people's YouTube comments. So Hikaru, Magnus. Now, real quick, the back row of pieces is shuffled, not to be confused with the second row of pieces, and that's because they're playing Fischer random chess, or freestyle, as it has been modernly called. Now, Hikaru opened the game with d4. The way Hikaru can castle is by moving his queen and knight, and then he would go this way, or he can move these three pieces and go that way. Actually, if you look at the position, a lot of pieces are on the correct squares. These are not, right? So d4, Magnus plays d5, and whenever these two meet online, they often meme around. Like they often create something within the first 10 moves that is hilarious, but this game's going to get very, very chaotic down the stretch. So Hikaru plays f3. In general, in Fischer random or freestyle, the center squares are still the most important. You still want to control the center. It's good to control the center with 2 pawns, and then you have to develop the rest of your pieces. That is why Magnus plays f6. Because he understands that ultimately both guys need to build toward the middle, and these two moves kind of repel the enemy bishop. You might put your knight behind the pawns, then you might bring your queen up, and then you might castle. Let's see what happens. Hikaru plays e4. By the way, black can continue to copy. e5 is actually a totally reasonable move here. One thing you don't want to do here as black, just conceptually, is you don't want to take this pawn. And the reason for that is you would be trading one of your central pawns for a flank pawn. I mean, it's basically my f pawn, which replaces my center pawn, right? And just a small, for anybody watching this that's intermediate or advanced, that's like a small way to think about it. Whenever you're trading a c or an f pawn into the center, it's actually beneficial, right? Like, it's not good to trade away one of your center pawns, which is why Magnus doesn't do that. He solidifies his center, and now it's like the boys are playing a Caro-Kann defense, right? It's a bit strange. Hikaru playing this little fishbowl with pawn to c3 and knight g6, okay? And now we will see the development of the knight followed by the queen and probably short castle. So Hikaru develops the knight over here, controlling some squares. Magnus does exactly what I've already mentioned. Hikaru does the same, and now we have e5. So the boys have each made 6 moves, and the position is completely symmetrical. They have both decided that this is the optimal way to set up their pieces before, committing the king this way or not committing the king that way. And then they will develop the other 3 pieces. Like I said, whenever they play each other, it's always very interesting because they are the top 2 players in the world, probably by skill, by social media following, by handsomeness. I will let you debate. I will let you debate that one. Yeah, they play the exact same way. Hikaru now plays bishop c2. Because the bishop wasn't going to be a hot prospect over here, but over here it has long-term attacking capabilities. Magnus looks at this move and is like, Hikaru, you're really smart. You're really smart. I agree. I think that's the best place to put the bishop. Now Hikaru plays bishop e3. Because you want to develop your bishop, but you also want to develop your knight. And if you developed your knight first, your bishop would have gotten blocked. So do develop your knights. Try not to block in your bishops. Magnus looks at the position and decides, Hikaru, like, look, I promise I'm not being creepy, all right? I promise I'm not, but you are a really smart guy. I mean, my goodness, you're really clever, Hikaru. I agree with you. I think putting the bishops out like this actually makes perfect sense. Okay, and now Hikaru plays knight d2. And I think you know where this is going, in case you haven't caught on. After Hikaru played bishop c2, bishop e3, and knight to d2, Magnus took one look at knight to d2 and said, wow, Hikaru, I mean, I just have to do the exact same thing. 9 moves have been played per player, and the position literally is the same. The position looks the same 9 moves ago, and it looks the same after 9 moves. And it hovers around 0.2, which is not really enough of a, critical advantage for white. Now, the real question in every position, which I'm sure you, along with every other chess player or chess enthusiast, has come across is, what the hell do I do now? What do I do now? I did everything I'm taught in the YouTube shorts. I put my pawns in the middle, my knights, my bishops. Now what? Hikaru now decides, look, I can castle, but I think he's going to keep copying me. And actually, I can castle in both directions. I'm going to move my knight, though. So he puts his knight out to b3 as a way to break the symmetry. Because if Magnus goes knight here, Hikaru will come here and get the bishop. And I think he will break the symmetry first. The problem is the knight actually needed to support the center. It doesn't really belong on the b3 square. And now immediately Hikaru's like, actually, I think, yeah, the best thing to do is to castle. You could have castled in the opposite direction and tried to launch an attack, but that would have obviously led to the opponent launching attack against you also. And now Magnus immediately begins, right, breaking, not just breaking the symmetry, but he begins instigating with Hikaru, who put his knight on the b3 square. Hikaru plays rook fd1. I don't understand this move, but I will try to understand this move just for you. The idea of rook d1, like when I look at rook d1, I'm thinking he's going to move this rook to d1, but you can't move that rook to d1 because that would weaken your a2 pawn, and black would play a4, pawn takes, and probably just win the pawn here in the long run. Now, why wouldn't Hikaru go rook fe1, which to me looks way more natural? Rook fd1, that is a mystery. I will be very honest. Maybe he's trying to move the knight back to safety over here, but that's actually not what he's trying to do. Maybe he's trying to put pressure on the opening of the d file. Magnus continues with pawn to a4, and it's quite clear at this point that, like if your knight is going d2, b3, c1, and the other guy is just improving the positioning of his outermost pawns by taking space away from you, by kicking your knight back, he's better. And as you can see from the evaluation, it is Magnus who has the advantage. And now he begins to, capitalize on this momentum. So he just played a5, he played a4, another forward move in this position, taking the pawn on d4, opening the bishop. Every move in a chess game has some sort of consequence. Like it improves your position in some way and might weaken it in some way. It might improve your opponent's position in some way, but weaken it in some way. Pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4. Now white is left with 2 pawns in the middle. But Magnus goes all in. At this point, Magnus could have taken the pawn on e4, kept chipping away, but he senses that he can strike, and he does. He gives up the bishop for the knight. That is a massive decision. Not an easy one, right? Because that bishop was looking very, very nice. Now, Hikaru takes with the pawn. Taking with the queen is worse. You need reinforcement on this side of the board because black is actually trying to go f5. So Magnus removes a defender of the f5 square, because he wants to, in the future, chip away with pawn to f5, and now he takes on e4. It's a very big moment here, because Hikaru can take back both with the bishop and with the pawn. Both look okay. To me, it looks much more natural to have 2 very strong central pawns. To Hikaru, this looks smarter. I'm like, wow, he left 3 pawns here to protect his king. Okay, but now look at this square. In a chess game, you battle with your physical pieces. You also battle on the empty squares. You got to look around at the empty squares and see if they're worth occupying. 1, 2, 3, and now 4 pieces defend the d5 square. And not just 4 pieces, 5 pieces. Magnus, total domination over the central square. What was that? I sounded Chinese. I am practicing a little bit of Mandarin with Lucy, but no, I was trying to say central, and then I merged it with centaur. Centaur? Anyway, g4. Taking away the f5 square. Also, potentially, maybe Magnus will blunder a checkmate. But actually, it is Magnus who is taking over. Little concept for all of you. When Magnus took the knight on g3, I want you to do like a little bit of... This is a dark squared bishop. It only fights on dark squares. White, though, has 3 pieces that fight on light squares. So by removing one of the pieces that can fight on the light squares, think about what Magnus has accomplished. He now has 3 pieces fighting on the light squares, and white only has 2. White only has these 2 pieces. This piece will never fight on the light squares. And so he's basically playing against a piece. Magnus likes to do this in his game sometimes, where he identifies a piece on the opposite side, and he basically creates a barrier against it and doesn't let it get into the game. And you'll see in this position, despite Hikaru having the 2 bishops, which is traditionally a chess advantage, Magnus is the one taking over. We see these, when these 2 guys play against each other, they do manage to outplay one another. It's like a tennis match. You outplay one another. Now pawn to f4. Look at this blockade. The knight is guarded by the knight guarding the pawn, and this bishop is just, it's eating rocks, which is what I used to do at the playground when I was 2 years old. It's probably why I turned out to be a chess player. Yeah, now this pawn has been cut off. Obviously, you're not going to hang the queen, but it's just a weak pawn. So what is Hikaru going to do? Plays knight to d3, trying to get a little bit of counterplay. Tries to go here, maybe put some pressure on the pawn. Magnus immediately pins the knight to the bishop, and now the knight cannot move. And the bishop can't move. He's under a lot of pressure. Hikaru, knight to e5, the only move. The only move. You got to attack the queen. That was the only way to move the knight. Now the queen moves. This pawn's about to fall. And Magnus is going to be a pawn up, and then he's going to bring this knight, and this knight. White can resign pretty soon. Hikaru gets rid of the bishop. Rook takes f5. And so now what do you do here? Because Magnus has completely taken over the game. He's going to win a pawn. He's going to keep improving his position. White's time is running out. g4. Hikaru is like catching a fish. And it's a big fish. I mean, he is slippery, yo. Like, you are not... g4 is a nasty little move. Nasty little move. Point is, it's a fork. Black can take en passant, which is what Magnus did. You can take on g5 and pin the pawn to the king. So you can do this, and then the pawn would not be able to take either of the pieces. But it's not so simple, because this pawn's actually very annoying. It takes away very important squares. Magnus gets rid of the pawn, queen g3, and brings the second rook. And now it's just a matter of time. This is very close to falling. That's very close to falling. I don't know how Hikaru's managing to defend everything. King g2, and now Magnus plays basically the final move. I mean, like the final move of all of his initiative. He's played about 10 to 15 moves now, totally taking over the game. Knight c4. The outermost piece arrives. For anybody watching, that is just a free knight. This move should get a brilliant move. It hits the knight, it hits the bishop, it hits the pawn. It cannot be taken because the knight is guarding f3. If you take this knight, I go rook f3, you simply lose because I'm getting into your position with doubled rooks and a queen. You're not going to be able to take, and your queen's going to be stuck, and then I'm going to checkmate you. In the face of knight c4, Hikaru finds the only move. Finds the only move. White is lost, except for one move, and therefore white is not lost. Rook h1. Counterattack on the queen, and the queen, in this position, has to go backwards. It has to go to e8. And somehow black is still better. But then white would continue to generate an attack over here. Magnus at this point either panicked because he got hit with rook h1 and he's only got 25 seconds, or he saw rook h1 and then sacrificed his queen to play knight f4 check and win the rook. And, you know, he's got pressure here. He's attacking the queen. Maybe he still thought he was pressuring, but Hikaru's now better. If he plays queen g4, he doesn't. Oh, he does play queen g4. I'm sorry. Knight to f4. And now the only winning move for Hikaru is to walk his king into the middle of the board. It's really hard to do that when you have a queen, knight, and rook. You have all these pieces. Why would you even touch your king? Which is what, you know, he brings his rook, and that's the wrong move. It's the wrong move because he blunders. He blunders. Rook takes g5. A move that cannot be taken. If you take, it's so nasty. I play knight to h3. If you take, I play knight h3. You take it, and then I play knight to e4. The point is that the queen is under fire from both of the knights, and there's a pin on this pawn from the rooks. I mean, to even see this, Magnus plays this move 6 seconds. You got 10 seconds remaining. Rook takes g5. The only move now from Hikaru not to lose the game is to dart the queen into the black position, trying to hunt down some pawns and always looking for opportunities to attack the king. Magnus plays rook to g2 check, king to e1, and now he has to play knight. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think he played knight takes f3 in this position, losing his knight. He loses the knight, Then he plays knight to d3 and here, and this is actually a draw if he plays knight f2 and takes the rook. Now, for whatever reason, he didn't do that. Maybe he thought that Hikaru's king was going to run away and then he was going to be, crazy things happen with 5 seconds on the clock. But knight f2 is still equal, but Magnus goes here. And the reason why this is losing is because it's check, block, check. Here, where's the win? Where's the win, right? The knight is threatening still. The rook is threatening the knight. But Hikaru finds the touch of death. He sacrifices the rook. And the king is forced to take. The queen comes back to fork the king and the rook. And white wins because he has a queen for a rook, and you would win this game in the long run. Magnus goes down against Hikaru, the two titans. And I'm going to show you 2 more games from this tournament that Hikaru played where you just get to see, just as a little bonus, when he doesn't play Magnus, who is obviously the best player in the world, when Hikaru just plays regular grandmasters who are like top 200 in the world, how he just makes it look so easy. He really just makes it look easy. It's incredible. He won both of these games with over 94% accuracy. Keep in mind, the back row piece is a shuffle. There are no openings, so you have to have a high level of chess understanding. Here he plays against Aparin. I've actually had Grisha on this channel several times when we have played against each other. Now, from the opening, Hikaru is already better. Why is he better? I explained a little bit of this to you in the Magnus game. In this format, when you dominate the center with your pawns, just like in a regular chess game, it makes it very difficult for the opponent to coordinate their pieces and gain space. And so when Aparin plays e4 and Hikaru plays d4, he already understands he is much better. These 2 pawns are never going to be fought against. You're not going to be able to break them apart. The bishop is now locked in, and black is just going to dominate with space and pieces. Now, rook c1, Hikaru plays knight f4, which is the best move. It's the best move, fighting for key squares, also putting pressure on that pawn so it can't easily move. d3, and now that pawn is just a target, so queen a6, and he's already swarming. Like, it's not just a matter of developing your pieces. He has that killer instinct. White plays bishop e2, here comes bishop c6. Very simple and straightforward idea. And by the way, when Aparin played d3 just to gain a little bit of space for his pieces, he weakened this diagonal, which will come into play after Hikaru applies as much pressure as possible to this pawn, right? So knight c4, Hikaru understands the best thing to do in this position is actually to take the knight. Now, why would you take the knight? Well, you're still trying to break through the position, but you're also removing the defense against the king. So when this happens, Hikaru takes the pawn, pressure on e2, on a2, from a2 to e2, a1, and the bishop is coming in with a check. You can take, which is what Aparin does, but here comes knight d7 first, hitting the queen, check on a5. Now the king has to move. The whole diagonal is wide open, so the king has to make a move. And now Hikaru plays bishop to d2, which is not just an offensive move, it's a defensive move. This knight is just a headache. It's a migraine for white to deal with. It's hitting everything important. It's preventing white from getting out of the position. Rook d1, and now watch this. g6. Now the queen's got to go somewhere. Where does the queen go? It can't go here, 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 here. Can't go anywhere. If it goes here, there's probably tactics. It goes to g4, and just solidity. I keep mixing words. I wanted to say solidity, if that's even a word, and solid, and I said solid. I'm making up words in today's recap. This pawn's just going to fall. This is huge pressure. White doesn't have a move. He can't move the knight forward. Can't move the queen forward. He tries to move the knight forward. Now I just play rook takes pawn. I mean, it was a nice move. g3, knight just drops back. You can't take the knight because the queen would take the rook. Knight d6, king e7. Hikaru got 19 seconds. He just has to not do anything too stupid. He pushes the queen back and simply brings the bishop. And it's like, yo, white doesn't have a move. He can't move this bishop. You can't move this bishop. The knight has nothing it can capture or take. The queen is just trapped on the edge of the board. You can never go g4 because of knight f4. He did this to a strong grandmaster in 20 moves. He tied him up like an air balloon. You know those balloons? Balloon animals? Is that a thing still? People get balloon animals? I don't know what people get. f4, pawn takes. You know, white is just trying something desperate to get out of the position. Hikaru plays queen takes e2. And the point is that after king takes, you take the pawn with a check and you win the queen. And so you want a free bishop that you sacrificed your queen for. He's simply dominating here. Rook g3 is a nice little move. The knight can't move because the bishop is hanging. So he plays rook c8, and now, Abidin can't even take the knight because rook c8, rook c4 because of the pin. And you can't even move. It's impossible to make a move here. So Hikaru wins. 94%. I got one more for you. This was the championship game. This was the game that he won to get from 9 out of 10 to 10 out of 11. He's playing Shield 12. This is Olympic player from Uzbekistan, Shamsidin Vokhidov. He's, I think, number 3 ranked in Uzbekistan. If not number 3, then number 4. Again, we go 95% accuracy, and Hikaru just understanding these positions. He brings the queen out. Very normal in this format to activate your queen very early, because oftentimes the knights are not positioned in a way that can attack your queen. And if the opponent doesn't have any easy way to attack your queen's actually the most powerful piece. I don't know if you knew that, but it is. And because it's the most powerful piece, bringing it out early and then repositioning it is quite beneficial. So knight c6, and believe it or not, white is already better, right? White is doing a nice job here, controlling the pieces. The bishop is blocked. Hikaru enjoys a nice advantage. Now, look how many moves it takes black to actually bring the knights to attack the queen, right? And by this point, Hikaru just, drops it back. Okay, the position is equal, fine. Bishop e7, knight to g3, just developing. Now the bishop comes to f6. A lot of these moves have taken 2 turns to put the knight and the pieces on the active squares. But because Hikaru plays this in a structural way, the black pieces don't have a fighting chance in the center. In chess, if you want your pieces to be felt from an activity perspective, they have to have open lines. They need to have space to breathe. They don't have any space to breathe here because black doesn't have any equity in the center. None. None. He doesn't have any equity in the center. So he's going to try. Again, look, every piece, it took 2 moves. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, took this one 1, but this looks very nice. But it's not good enough because one guy dominates the center. He dominates the only pawn breaks in the middle, which means in the long run, if you dominate the central squares, you will be able to maneuver your pieces more successfully. H3, just a waiting move. Even this bishop is going to come out and ultimately have more equity in the center. At some point, you see, Shamsidin is kind of like maneuvering, and he's probably going to castle the king to the right side of the board, bishop h2, and he does castle, and Hikaru also castles, but black doesn't have equity in the center. He only has 1 pawn advanced to the 6th rank, and doesn't have anything on the 5th. And the second that he's going to push anything, it's going to weaken stuff that's already there. So if Hikaru is able to make a few more improving moves, what's going to happen is because of his space advantage, he's either going to break into the black position with his pawns, or he's going to break into the black position with his pieces, or black is going to do something ridiculous, right? So knight takes e4. He's trying to fight back. So now you've lost one of your only pieces. It's been replaced, and you help white, right? And now white has knight c5, knight g5. You're going to bring the second rook. You might even bring the pawns. Let's see. d5. Okay. What have I been saying? The second that black creates equity in the center, he's going to weaken something. He has now permanently weakened the e5 square, which we've already talked about in this recap, right? Squares that don't have anything like defending them in terms of pawns. And that's just a pawn that, right? It's just not going to. So, knight g5. Hikaru doesn't play knight g5, he plays knight d2. It doesn't really matter. That pawn's a huge weakness. Shield takes. That's not his legal name on his passport, Shield. Bishop d6, rook e1. Hikaru just has one very nasty target to work with for the entire game. Black is doing okay, but it's going to be very tough to guard this position. King h1, just a generally useful move. h6, also just a generally useful move. And now knight f3. Now, if you take this, you lose, because you walk directly into the rook and queen, and I would jump into the middle and I would win the game. a6. Hikaru plays queen back. Even though the position is equal, it's just going to be annoying. And black can create some counterplay. Black can try to put the knight a bit more actively on the c4 square, target the pawn, still defend e5 because it does that from the c6 square as well. Queen d7. But, it's just a matter of time until the soft spots of your position get exposed. Rook f6. He's doing a very nice job defending himself, but this is the domino right here. That's the domino. It's going to be these nasty pawns. It's not just about putting pressure on the pawn on e6. It's going to be the prospect of creating an attack with something like pawn to g5, or something like a pawn to f5 with a knight on g6, rook f8, knight back to g2. He's just trying to overwhelm the nervous system. h4, this This is why Hikaru's number 2 in the world. I mean, who would have thought 3 pawns like this in front of the king can move forward? H4 is crazy. H4 would never even occur to me, but look at the control. Even though Shamsidian is getting his pieces to better squares, it's white who is breaking through successfully simply on momentum. The rook now has to move. A4. A4 is genius. A4 is completely genius. I mean, this move, G5 followed by A4 is on another level. I mean, it really is. I mean, none of you watching would have played A4. Of course, you cannot take the pawn with the queen, because if you take the pawn, you are losing E6. But more importantly, it just shuts down this side of the board. There's no queen moves. There's no pawn moves. And B3 is coming next, right? So now the knight and the bishop cannot take the pawn because B3 would kick out the knight completely. He goes rook E8. Now Hikaru kicks the knight out. This is weak, but it doesn't matter because the rook is under attack. And when you move the rook, I now rip open the position of the king. I mean, G5 followed by A4 is, you know, he wanted to go here and he couldn't play B3 because he didn't want to lose a pawn. So he went A4 and then B3 and then knight E3 and then pawn. I was just ridiculous. Rook G1, and now all of the pressure of the position catches up to him. It's an overwhelming attack. Black is trying his best to defend, but you can't. I mean, you're getting swarmed. Knight F6 is a fork. Bishop F8 back. He takes on E8. He picks up the material. That queen is not protected. Rook G8 check. King has to take. Free queen. Black resigns. When Hikaru plays people not named Magnus, it is still so unbelievably impressive the way, I mean, these guys get things done. Like, look at the way he just, like, 10 moves, he had a slight positional advantage. And the way he just waited. He won this game like he was Magnus. Like, if I showed you this game, I didn't tell you white was Hikaru, you would say white is Magnus Carlsen. It's always good when you're playing like Magnus. Just slow. A4's genius. It's a completely brilliant move. Like, it's so smart. It looks so random, but it's so clever. And Hikaru got 10 out of 11 and he beat Magnus. That's all I have for you today. And if you happen to be watching this video in August of 2025, I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer. September, you know, is coming soon. We have a monthly challenge on Chessly. We will have a monthly challenge every single month. You can get a limited badge that is only available for that month. And soon we have leaderboards, leagues, all that stuff is coming on Chessly. Make sure to check it out. And I will see you in the next video. Get out of here.